Good afternoon and welcome to the closing of our Scaleup Summit, the first one that we organize in the MENA region. Why in the MENA region? Because MENA, the Arab region, is becoming more and more an epicenter of innovation. And that's why we decided, starting this year, 2021, to have a dedicated Scaleup Summit focused on the region, including all the Arab countries that, despite most of them still in their infancy, are getting a serial producer of innovation. And particularly, there are vibrant startups and scale-up ecosystems that are popping up, let's say, everywhere in the region. And that's why we decided to focus on our dedicated format, the Scaleup Summit, on this specific region. Let me just recap what is a Scaleup Summit. A Scaleup Summit is a format with one main focus, that fostering a business and strategic relationship between international corporations and startups and scale-ups. And that's why we move this format from region to region with the goal of fostering business and strategic opportunities, and particularly shedding lights on specific world ecosystem that we believe are interesting to be looked at. And so we started on March 23rd, almost 2-3 weeks ago, from Dubai, also with the contribution of the Dubai Chamber and the Dubai Future Foundation. That has been our opening event. Then we have been working alongside with startups through corporate insight session to present them, introduce the corporate that they were about to meet in one-to-one meeting that are still happening. And on the other hand, we also work with corporates using our bootcamp format that is focused on sharing best practice among peers. And as you may see, the focus of this Open Innovation Bootcamp, this is a closed door format that we use, is to have an intimate discussion following the Chatham House rule between innovation executives. And particularly the focus of this bootcamp has been not just on open innovation, but also on sustainability, with the contribution of corporate of the region like Zain, Emirates, and Agility, plus other international corporates. And then we have also tried to provide a bit more knowledge on what is happening in the region from multiple countries. So you can see this is our Mind the Chapter series that is focused on the MENA ecosystem. And you can see we have had this intimate one-to-one conversation with industry leader, moving from Dubai up to Kuwait until also Lebanon and Beirut. And this way we are trying also to provide our audience a better understanding what is happening in the region. Really a lot of things. But coming back to today, today is the closing of the summit. And for the closing of the summit, we have captured probably the most interesting part. We have been working since the past few months on putting together a report focused on mapping the most interesting scale-ups of the region. And that will be the core of the presentation today, is a preliminary report. And then, as will be explained today, we will complement the information, the data that we have gathered in the past few months with additional information coming from the countries in order to come to a full report to be released over the summer. But there's an effort that we have done at Mind the Bridge alone, but we have done this also through our partners. And I would really like to ask to join me on stage Gabriel, Petrus, and Kareem, Hassan. As you know, we are talking about two important institutions that are our two partners that have honored Mind the Bridge of their friendship and support in this effort that is not just focused on particularly on the region. And so Gabriel Petrus represents ICC, International Chambers of Commerce, while Kareem Hassan represents the United Nations, UN-ESCWA, that is the part of the United Nations that is focused on this part of the world. So, Gabriel, I would like to give you the floor.
Thanks a lot, Alberto. Welcome, everyone. I think you mentioned, Alberto, this is the closing summit, but actually I see this is only the first step we're taking together in the region, a very important first step to actually map the challenges in terms of the scale-ups in the region and why we're doing that. So when we launched the MENA Center of Entrepreneurship a few months ago, one of our commitments is actually to support the scale-up of startups in the region. We believe there's a huge potential. I think the results that you will be presenting very soon to the audience are very interesting because it shows that there's still very important room for the region to grow. And this growth won't happen alone by itself. It's important to highlight that public and private sector collaboration is key to really enable open innovation in the region. And I would say one of the most interesting results of the report I will be covering actually is about the capital raised by scale-ups in the region. I think there's still very important room for expansion in the future. And but there's another side of the report which is about employability and job creation, because we must understand that as more startups and as more successful scale-ups we have in the region, more employment and more jobs will be able to create, because it's about thinking about the whole supply chain in the region. It's not about the company or the startup or the scale-up itself, but it's about all the customers, their clients, their supply chains, and the number of jobs. And we know the Arab region has one of the highest rates of youth population in the globe, but still one of the highest rates of youth unemployment. So we do strongly believe as ICC that investing in entrepreneurship, and we're doing that with the United Nations Economic Commission for Western Asia, my colleague Kareem Hassan will be able to explain better what we're doing in the center. But again, that's our aim. Investing in startups is about creating jobs and creating new economic opportunities for the youth in the future. Thanks, Alberto. Thanks, Kareem.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gabriel, for introducing our work and the idea behind our cooperation. Actually, yeah, let me explain to you what is a MENA Center of Entrepreneurship. It's an initiative called by the International Chamber of Commerce and the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia to prepare and mobilize the next generation of entrepreneurs in the Arab region by developing the skills of young people who face uncertain employment prospects and helping catalyze local entrepreneurship and the jobs of the future. To increase the scalability of startups in the Arab region, we really need to enhance the local startup ecosystems by providing entrepreneurs with specialized training, monitoring, and support services to establish, fund, manage, and expand their startups. And this is in our center's mandate, an ultimate goal to help startups scale up from the Arab region to the global markets. And I believe this summit, it's an opening session and closing session, and the activities in between and the activities that we will do together afterward will help bring some hands-on solutions and methodologies and work plans to shift our mindset from just working local and working on a very minimal global impact to regional and global scale, and how to transfer the ideas and technologies and amazing startups that are produced by Arab people, especially young and women, and bring that to the global market. That's our goal, and that what we will be working on in the next phase. Thank you very much for attending this event. We are looking forward for a global cooperation to support our region, to support our center's activity, and the young and young people and women entrepreneurs in the Arab region. Thank you.
Thank you, Kareem. And I think the fact that we decided again to have a Center of Entrepreneurship in Beirut, I think is a strong message to the region, and it's something that we are particularly proud about. And Gabriel probably may be beneficial to provide a bit more visibility on what are the plans with the Center of Entrepreneurship, which plan do we have in order to scale this format at a global level, because I believe that the value is not just to support local ecosystem, but also to connect them. Can you give us a bit more?
Absolutely. Thanks, Alberto. So we're actually planning to expand our network of the centers of entrepreneurship. The first one was launched in Istanbul to actually work with Central Asia, which is also a very prominent region. The second one in Beirut to work with the Arab region, which actually encompasses some of the northern African countries, but also MENA countries, as you mentioned, Alberto. And the idea, the future, we are preparing actually to launch our hubs in Ghana and Nigeria very soon, which will open for us a new area of work in Africa and also South America and Asia. And the idea is actually to enable startups from all those countries and regions to interconnect. So that's something we do as ICC with a network of 45 million businesses. We can actually connect business from all over the globe. But we're not doing that alone. We're doing that with United Nations, especially with MENA in the Arab region. And one of our plans is next steps actually to make available capacity building programs, train startups, and deliver, first of all, identify which are the gaps. And this work with MinerBridge is really important for us to have a full assessment, not only on the region itself, but how the region is compared to other regions in the globe, because we want to make sure that new startups that will be seeing the light of the day in the upcoming years in the Arab region, they are able actually to look what other startups in other regions are doing. We want to have the best benchmarks, and we can do that with this report. I think this report is the very first step for the plethora of capacity building programs we want to launch in the upcoming year.
Thank you, Gabriel. Yes, the report is the first step. It should be a recurring step, because I think if you can measure something, it's difficult you can improve it. And so I think the first mandate that we decided to have was to try to know where are we. Anytime that we start working with an ecosystem, we want to have a picture in terms of where they are, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and particularly how does it compare with other ecosystems? Because again, there are also similarities and learning and benchmark that can be deployed. And so if you agree, I will focus the next 10-15 minutes in quickly presenting the main outcomes of this preliminary report. And then Gabriel and Kareem will call you back on stage after the presentation, so together we can point out what are the next steps to turn this preliminary report and preliminary research in a full report, and also maybe trigger some, as you mentioned, capacity building program for supporting the region. Perfect. So if we can start deep diving into our report, as you see, the report is the usual one that we adopt, let's say, across the globe. It's called Tech Scaleup MENA, meaning that the goal of this report is surfacing what particularly innovative company that we define as scale-ups. As you know, startup scale-ups are buzzwords, so sometimes are really difficult to be properly measured because there are no concrete definition. So just to give you some reference point, we talk about a scale-up referring to a startup, then an innovative company that has been able to raise at least $1 million. something too important to be mentioned since the beginning. Raising capital is not a measure of success in itself. It's just a proxy to track the progress of these companies. The real goal, as also Gabriel mentioned before, is to be able to produce revenue and employment at scale. That is the goal that we are aiming, and capital funding is instrumental to that goal. Obviously, since the data of revenue are less promptly available and not always available at all, so we use this proxy, that is the capital raise, for tracking the innovative company in the different regions. And we adopt a methodology consistently across the globe that will help us to provide, to measure the pulse of an ecosystem, that might be a country or a region, and compare with others. So let's look at the data of the Arab region. And again, Arab region, we refer to 19 countries that are located from Morocco up to the United Emirates. So that is the region that we are looking at. And the first data that I can share with you, that we mapped the 448 scale-ups out of the region, able to collectively raise $6.2 billion. Compared to the overall GDP of the area, we're talking about that the investment into innovation are about 0.08% of the overall GDP of the area. And we have about 0.1 scale-up every 100,000 inhabitants. So this is the first reference. On the right hand of this picture, you can see the most advanced countries in the region, and you can see that there is definitely a front runner, that are the United Arab Emirates, and again, almost 200 of the 448 scale-ups of the region are located over there. And then the other relevant ecosystem of the region are the Saudi Arabia, with about 70 scale-ups. Then you can see Egypt, Lebanon, and Jordan, and then down to Kuwait and to the others. So just to give you some reference point. If we move to the next slide, you can see also what has been the progress over time of the region. And again, I would just focus on three main data points, not to go too much into detail. First of all, before 2015, the ecosystem was simply not, the innovation ecosystem in the region was simply not existent. It was really, really small numbers. And then you can see starting 2015, the ecosystem started developing. Obviously, has been a gradual progress that has been moved to the current numbers that are about pretty stable, starting at 2018, that are about 80, 85 on average startups, new scale-ups per year, and about $1 billion of capital raised per year in the last few years. The good news, if there is a good news of these numbers, is that looking at the numbers, COVID has not particularly impacted the growth trajectory of the region. And so that is something that we have also seen in other ecosystems. Just to give you a bit more understanding of why these numbers do not show any COVID impact, first of all, because we're talking about definitely more mature and structured companies. And typically these kind of companies are able to survive better also difficult moment of time. And particularly because COVID has not stopped the investments into the most mature startups, that scale-ups, the way we define it, while particularly the most impacted part of the startup ecosystem by COVID has been the early stage startups, because again, it's easier for investors to continue to invest in a company where they are proudly invested versus making new investments into a fresh new company. So probably we will see an impact of COVID in the next years, as probably the number of new startups, early stage startups, has probably been slowed down during the COVID period. But we believe that also the situation currently has been recovered. But again, this is some number. So a system that was not existent before 2015 and now currently is growing at a stable pace. In this slide, you can see the comparison, the region compared to other ecosystems or to other countries, just to have a reference. And you can see that the MENA region has a size cumulatively that is probably, let's say, slightly less than half of industrialized company like Germany. And that is probably even less than that. And also cumulatively, they are more than 50% of an emerging company like South Korea, just to give you some references. As you know, the world of scale-ups is a word that is growing, and you can see that there are some dominant ecosystem that definitely more ahead in the game, not particularly because they are performing well, but also because they started the innovation journey earlier. US, namely, and Silicon Valley is part of US. You see that US has a number of scale-ups is about 27,000, and cumulative, we're talking about 866 billion of capital raised. And Silicon Valley is a good more than 1/3 of the US numbers. And then the other ecosystem that is particularly relevant is Israel. Despite its 8 million population, is able to produce over 2,000 scale-ups, able to raise $44-45 billion of capital. And you can see for both of these countries, the percentage at the bottom that are what we call the scale-up density, the number of scale-ups per number of inhabitants, and the investing ratio, the capital investors compared to the GDP, are pretty high. Europe, compared to the US, is definitely in a laggard position. You can see that the number of Europe are 1/3 of the number of the US. China, that has the numbers and figures that were lower in Europe just 4 or 5 years ago, currently is ahead of Europe. And then you can see there are some emerging countries that are changing the global map. So that's why it's so important to compare the numbers when we are looking at a specific region, we look at specific countries also with other ecosystems, also to understand similarities, to understand if there are some growth patterns to be considered, and potentially some best practice and learning to be mutuated. If we move to the next slide, we can just present the data in a visual way. Again, we put the different ecosystem, trying to compare the number with the size of the economy, the GDP, and the size of the population. And you can see that obviously there are some ecosystems that are outperforming all the others, Silicon Valley first and Israel, and then the US, and inside Europe, the UK. And then there are other ecosystems that are on average, let's say, a bit behind. And we're talking about mostly Europe. We're talking about South Korea and China. Again, there is a clear underperformance compared to the top ones. You can see MENA. MENA is the bottom left corner, meaning that there is a lot of road ahead to be pursued. That's why initiatives like the different Center of Entrepreneurship are so useful, to try to put them in a growth trajectory. If you can see the United Emirates, that is probably the most advanced country as part of the region, they are performing with numbers that are quite close to the number that we see in Europe. And so the performance is good. But let's zoom in the analysis inside the region. And so let's do some regional benchmarking, also to see, as part of the region, which regions are overperforming compared to some regions that are still underperforming. And again, here is a combination of multiple factors. When the innovation journey has started for most of this region pretty recently, that's also our data has shown, and also what are the different initiatives that's been taken by the different countries, by the different government, by different also international organizations to support the ecosystem. And you can see that if we put the MENA average at the center of this matrix, you can see there are some ecosystems definitely overperforming. Again, as mentioned, United Emirates and particularly the Dubai is probably the most outperforming system in the region. We can see Lebanon and Jordan that are definitely outperforming, considering also their size. And this is particularly remarkable for Lebanon, considering also the 2020 has hit the economy pretty badly for multiple circumstances. And then you can see there are some other ecosystems that are well positioned in a trajectory of recovery. We see, for example, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and also Bahrain, that you can see this economy have a pretty high density in terms of scale-ups, but still they are a bit underperforming in terms of capital investment. And then you can see all the the countries you can see in the left bottom quadrant, that are the companies that probably need to make an extra effort in order to fill the gap. And this is mostly the typical situation of North Africa. That probably is the part of the region that needs more support and more help. If we move to the next one, sometimes when we're talking about scale-up ecosystem, we talk about country, but in reality, we are talking about cities and hubs. This is something, by the way, that is a common trend at global level. Scale-ups tend to concentrate in specific cities inside a country, typically one city per country. If you look at the UK, 70% plus of the UK scale-ups are located in London, plus another 5-6% in Cambridge. So just to tell you the strong concentration of the innovation economy on specific hubs. Similar figures we have found in France with the Paris region. And then if you go also, we have seen in the United States, the strong polarization around San Francisco and the Silicon Valley, but we can see similar data also in Boston and in New York. So that is a phenomenon when typically scale-ups tend to concentrate in one pole rather than be distributed among multiple locations. For example, Germany, we can find, while the GDP is equally distributed across the country in 10 cities, you can see 10 cities mostly have the same share of the national GDP. We see that the startup economy is mostly concentrated out in Berlin. And those are stellar. So it's important also when we do this kind of analysis, go beyond the country level and see if there are some specific cities that have that might be called the hotspot of epicenter of innovation. And you can see, again, with no surprise, Dubai is leading the ranking, 176 scale-ups and almost 4 billion invested. Then we have Cairo in Egypt, then Beirut, Riyadh, Amman, Kuwait cities, and then Abu Dhabi again for the Emirates. And then you can see also some other cities that are slowly emerging as interesting scale-up pools. Another warning, we are talking about scale-ups. Scale-ups is the most mature part of the startup ecosystem, but it's a startup ecosystem below that, meaning a lot of emerging companies, a lot of small companies still on the early stage that have the potential to become scale-ups. So when we measure this number, we are looking at the peak of the iceberg, but keep in mind that under the water level, there is a vital, vibrant, and dynamic economy, innovation economy that will produce numbers in the next coming years. And so this is just to review, which is the city hubs perspective. Another interesting analysis that we typically track from our analysis is also the concept of dual companies. Innovative company 10 are, first of all, are not a strong legacy with a specific ecosystem. They are very mobile by definition. And typically, we see that the tech scale-ups and tech startups tend to move abroad. Not necessarily to move abroad the entire operation, but move abroad a part of their operation, typically the headquarters, to get in the ecosystem when they can get more opportunity. And particularly, they can get more funding opportunity and more strategic opportunity. And so we see that it's pretty normal to see that most of the scale-ups tend to relocate abroad, and particularly tend to relocate to the United States, and particularly in Silicon Valley, to get access to more funding opportunity. And we can see that this phenomenon is also evident in the region. When we see a certain percentage of scale-up, you can see the most important one that have decided to move the headquarters abroad. You can see the typical destination are the US. Different from Europe, New York is the first choice rather than Silicon Valley. And then we can see there are some, again, also historical connection between Tunisia and France. And also we can see some relocation also in the UK. On the other end, we see also some relocation inside the region. On the one hand, some scale-ups are moving to Dubai to getting access to more opportunities and also to take advantage of the infrastructure of innovation that has been implemented over there. Again, during the opening, we have the opportunity to present what the Dubai Future Foundation is doing for the ecosystem. The Expo 2020 Dubai is another accelerator of the innovation ecosystems happening over there, and so it's pretty normal that we see some scale-ups are considering to leverage the Dubai platform for growing. But also we see some other relocation from Dubai, for example, to other countries of the region for finding more opportunities or more market opportunities. If you can move to the next one, and we asked it, we were discussing that this is company that are being able to raise capital. The typical question is from who, and we can see that most of the typical fuel of a startup is venture capital, and you can see that venture capital represent 96% of the capital raised. There has been some very few selected scalers that raise capital through ICO. Coin offerings. Again, this is a phenomenon that's been particularly strong in 17 and 18, but currently it's definitely losing relevance. While, and this is an interesting new phenomena, also due to the fact that NASDAQ launched in Dubai the Grow Market, and so that might be another opportunity for getting organic growth funding in the region. There are 2% of them got funded through IPO, meaning raising capital on the markets. If we look at where the LPs of this venture capital are, you can see there is a strong corporate participation. There is a strong percentage of CVCs, so corporates that are investing into the region, and you see 61% of the deals have a corporate participation. And we also see a strong role of the government. It's about 34% in terms of participation. If we move to the next one, we can also take a look at another kind of analysis that we do is where the money comes from in terms of nationality of the investors. And you can see that most of the capital is domestic. So the innovation ecosystem is full domestically. 63% of the round include domestic investors, meaning investors from the region. We see a certain participation of US investors. Typically, when the US investors are involved, they come on board in the later stage of the company, and so typically they lead the larger rounds. And then if you look at the capital breakdown inside the region, you see, again, no surprise, UAE represents almost 61% of the deal, followed by Saudi Arabia, that is covering another 25% of the capital invested. If we go to the next slides, also trying to understand which vertical, which technologies are dominant into the region. Again, you see that there are not specific specialization, but actually the company are ranging from a broad variety of industries and verticals. You see moving from e-commerce, that is attracting probably the largest part of the investments and all the number of scale-ups. And I think this is important also as a way for using the digital channel for exploiting and leveraging the potential of the different economies. Then you can see fintech. Again, this is a typical vertical that doesn't require large investment, but there is a strong potential. And then you can see that we have multiple other areas represented, moving from logistics, human resources, productivity and business, software, up to mobility, education, health, and advertising. And that's mostly it. Finally, just to give you, in a single representation, what are currently the top 25 poster children of the region and the geography. This is the top 25 scale-up company per capital raise. And so you can have a breakdown. You can see from probably the most recent success case is Kareem, but there are many others that are definitely making a good progress, and hopefully we can find some of them reaching the so-called unicorn status, because I believe that in order to have an ecosystem fully deployed, you need also to have success stories. So we need local success stories, because a success stories is worth more than 100 words. And so that might probably also show the way for others to follow and build role models to be potentially replicated. So that is the main outcomes of our preliminary report. As mentioned, this is just a preliminary report, meaning that some additional work is needed in order to turn this analysis into a full and more comprehensive analysis. And then I would like to call back on stage Kareem and Gabriel for explaining us what are the next steps.
Thank you, Alberto. Perhaps Kareem, you'd like to start explaining a little bit of the strategy consultation process that we envisage in the Arab region.
Yes, actually, thanks a lot, Alberto, for explaining the report to the attendees of this event. Actually, this report built on the basis of international experiences and intensive research activities. So I'd like, first of all, to thank all the people who worked on this report. And actually, to take it to the next level, we will work on strengthening its outcomes and collaborating with Arab member states, which is a crucial and essential part here. We did our homework by doing the research, and now it's time for more collaborative work and inclusion to strengthening this report. So this is a first step we will be doing. We will reach out Arab member states to be included in this report and consider all of their inputs and recommendations. Second of all, we will facilitate regional and technical and consultation meetings, and this could be based on specific topics or specific regions or specific areas in the region. So this we will be doing soon after the closing event. Thirdly, we will identify the regional and national gaps, how to support Arab entrepreneurs and startups to be able to scale up. What are the gaps here? Because in the report, we will do a detailed analysis on the scaled up startups, but why we have this gap compared to other regions or compared to other countries or compared to the Western world in general. So it's essential to identify the regional gaps here. And then to fulfill these gaps, we have to come up with solutions and draft regional and national plans to offer the needed help to Arab startups to be able to scale up regionally and globally. So in general, these are the four main steps we will start directly after this closing event. We are looking forward to cooperate with all the people who are interested in this topic. We are looking forward to cooperating with the Arab governments and the public sector, the private sector, the communities, NGOs, the startups, and also individuals. We would like to bring all of our efforts together to understand how our startups are scaling in the Arab region and how to improve their scalability and how to increase the numbers of scaled up startups in the region. As Alberto mentioned, that we have like almost 500 startups who were able to scale up regionally or globally. So we are talking about only a few hundreds of scale-ups. How can we all together increase this number to hundreds of thousands of scale-ups in a digitized era, in a global pandemic where forced all of us to rethink about priorities and how to grow our businesses and economies, and how to also support our regional sustainable development goals. So it's a call for cooperation. It's not just our work, it's a regional effort and also a global effort to make this region a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Kareem. I think the goal is exactly that. So we will work together with UN-ESCWA and ICC in order to reach out to the different relevant stakeholders in the different countries in order to complement this analysis as much as possible and to provide a broader and more intelligent picture, because sometimes data requires an extra level of understanding in order to do what at the end is really important, that identify concrete next steps, actions in order to improve the situation. Because one thing we are in agreement, there is a starting base in the MENA region in terms of potential of innovation is improving, but the more the better, and so we need more, and we are really convinced that we can improve this situation by putting in action the actions that might help us to move the needle in a different and better situation. I don't know, Gabriel, if you have any further comments here.
No, I think I'll just piggyback on what Kareem said about, like, I think the gap that we saw between both the challenges in the Arab region with other regions is still very considerable, and I think this is an opportunity for us. And this is again the first day. It's the closing of the summit, but it's also the first day of our long-term partnership with Mind the Bridge and ESCWA in the region to change the reality. And I hope in 5 years, perhaps, we'll be able to convene again in the summit and see the progress we will do in the region. So thanks a lot, Alberto, for your leadership and the Mind the Bridge initiative, and everyone who's actually part of this the consultancy team of the report, and thanks Kareem, Hassan for incredible support from UN-ESCWA on this project.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Kareem. And just to mention another activity that we've been intensely collaborating together with ICC is Corporate Startup Stars. During the opening, we officially kick off the 2021 Corporate Startup Stars edition. The Corporate Startup Stars, in a nutshell, is we are looking for corporates at global level that are concretely working with startups, because we believe that in order to help startups to turn into scale-ups, they need to do business and they need to have strategic opportunities, and the strategic opportunities come from the world of established companies. So bridging the world of startup with the world of established companies is one of the mission of Mind the Bridge. And so annually, and this is the 5th year in a row, we launched this initiative called Corporate Startup Stars to identify the corporates at global level that are most startup friendly and most active in collaborating with startups. And so also for this year, the Corporate Startup Stars is officially open. So we're looking for application from all over the world, because we want to identify role models from corporates that are really able to collaborate and innovate together with startups. So applications are open. I invite all the corporates to apply. And in order to close this closing event, I would like to launch the video that we use in Dubai for kicking off the 2021 Corporate Startup Stars edition. Thank you.